Harvest the Power is a wonderful program that's designed for UUs to help develop lay leadership. So it spends a lot of time, rather than telling you how to create an agenda and run a meeting successfully, it's more about introspection and learning more about yourself and your own theology, and then how you can use that to conduct meetings and behave at congregational meetings and at board meetings and the like. It's specifically training in leadership that's very theologically based, and it makes a very clear distinction between that and the more managerial side of leadership. So it's a way of thinking about leadership as something that's, instead of thinking of it as a chore or an obligation that you have to do, instead think of it more as a spiritual practice. And that's a very different perspective. So the Harvest the Power program treats this very differently. So you're going to get into a lot of very deep conversations during the course of this whole program. There are 12 sessions. There's 12 two-hour sessions for this, so it's very in-depth. Each of the sessions have 3 different units to them: identity, purpose, and path. And then within each of those, there's 4 different themes: self, community, leadership, and vision. And in all cases, there's activities that happen, and those activities vary. So sometimes it's the entire group, sometimes you just pair up with people, and other times you get into small groups of 3 or 4 people.
So the first workshop is called Leadership Journey. And I chose as my metaphor this rubber band, because I think of leadership as expanding and contracting, because we always want to be growing and learning, and sometimes we need to go back and say, okay, but what are my core values? What do I still believe? And so it's a constant stretching and coming back. So I chose the rubber band as the entire leadership journey. And that goes to different kinds of leadership. So they talk about early childhood or first experiences of leadership, and then congregational leadership, and then back to the larger, more of a philosophy of leadership, or what do you feel is a leader. So it goes from the small to the current to the large.
The workshop is designed with 3 goals to help us explore our Unitarian Universalist journey. And the first one is to increase participants' knowledge of Unitarian Universalist history, tradition, and current practice. And the idea for me in this and thinking is that we actually are very current edge and modern, but we actually come from a legacy that shapes who we are. And as leaders, we need to understand the culture that we're working in and leading in, so that way we could do that and be accountable to our past, but also accountable to those people who are coming in with some of these thoughts about us and wondering how they fit into this larger, wonderful faith tradition.
What we're looking at is the importance of talking about power and authority and what leadership is, and the difference between leadership and management, because our congregations need more powerful leaders. And we need to think about how our congregation is empowering or authorizing or giving those leaders not only the power that they have, but the authority to execute on that power.
That's what this workshop is about. It's about those moments in your life when, because of an event or a circumstance, something shifts for you. So this is deep stuff we're getting into here. The group brainstorms some adaptive challenges in society as a whole, and then comes up with some things that are going on in their own congregations that could be adaptive challenges, and they talk about what would require these new organizational, cultural, and spiritual capacities.
We are the inheritors of a free faith, and faith in which we freely choose our beliefs, our values, and in whom or what we trust. We decide how we will act on our faith and in our lives and our work. So this workshop then, based upon that, points out that it is the congregational leaders' opportunities and responsibility to choose in their faith, their actions, and their responses to situations. And it tries to deepen our understanding of connecting between the leader's faith and the choices that they make in leading the congregation.
Keeping priorities straight, so your own priorities and the ones in your congregation. And I think that's, that where your path is going to take you, and that gets kind of to some of those boundary kind of things. There's lots of different things and lots of balls in the air, and which ones are important, which ones are pulling you down, which ones are, giving you energy to go forward.
The concepts we normally associate with integrity, principles, ethics, values, purposes, intention, are all in there. We also think of personal moral character when we think about integrity, encompassing things like honesty, trustworthiness, spiritual well-being, and grounding. This workshop explores and expands on those aspects of integrity, but it also brings in some concepts we don't typically associate with integrity, like community and creativity. Leaders don't behave in isolated moments of integrity, that this really is an embodiment of the values and the vision that they carry for the long haul, and that they act with integrity from a place of self-knowledge and discipline. And they don't do that under pressure and in times of crisis in isolation from being prepared to act in that way.
And what the workshop is about, interestingly, is where do the new voices come from that help feed our imagination and creativity. And so what we talk about in the workshop is two or three different things that ultimately end up to be requests or invitations for what voices are we inviting into our leadership conversations. Introduce a couple of concepts. One is the matter of mattering versus marginalizing. And so again, who's in, who's out, what forms does that take? And then we talk about voices. What voices are heard, what voices are not heard.
So your mask is asking you to sort of look at danger and fear and inviting the fears that you have when you face a dangerous situation.
Part of leading from that calm center is to have some awareness of what's going on. So what the workshop does is it takes you through 4 different activities that are trying to get at how you would actually use the fact that there are systems out there that are influencing your congregation and they're influencing your life.
The workshop I'm going to discuss is Workshop 11, Keeping Distress Productive. And at the heart of this workshop is the goal of taking people with problems and transforming them into people with solutions. And this workshop gives congregational leaders tools to address the emotions that fuel congregational conflict. And these tools in service to creating people with solutions, in effect, give the work back to the community or back to the people.
How a leader can give form and voice to a guiding vision as a congregation works through adaptive challenges. So very much about adaptive leadership. Specifically, some information about transparency is essential to leadership that has come up in conversation before, but there is an activity in which participants talk about how important transparency is to good leadership and what ways they might suggest to make decisions and leadership actions more transparent to the congregations.